Hi, everyone. This is Esateys.
And this is Rafael, and welcome back to Relationships Done Different. Today's topic is going to be controlling your thoughts. Is it possible? Just a small little topic, but no problem. Of course, none of us have any, right?
Right.
So, E, what's on your mind today?
Well, this was a particularly interesting topic for me because recently I've been coaching many people, and most of them have been going through this experience of they feel like their mind is taken over their lives. So much chatter, so much rhetoric going on that it's been driving a few people right up against the wall. And because of that, one of the things that came to my mind was, let's talk about this. Let's talk about this thing that happens. And what you'll notice is that this kind of mental gibberish overload occurs for most people in cycles. Sometimes your mind is quieter than others for the majority of people. And then at other times, it's like, wah, it just doesn't be still. And the question is, what about controlling your thoughts? Or what can you do to control your thoughts? Or is it even possible to control your thoughts? Well, let me tell you that the actual answer is no. So I want to uplift everyone right off the bat.
Okay, so we'll see you next week on our next show.
Okay, so the answer is no, but it's also yes. So
Now that's spoken like a true lawyer, and I'm the lawyer. So what are you talking about?
Okay. When we notice that our thoughts are just going in a circular manner, like an endless tape, it usually means that some part of us has been activated or brought to a place where it is threatened. That really means that there's fear. When there is fear, then the personality or the ego becomes very disturbed, and it starts chattering, and it starts running to all the file cabinets in the brain that will bring up whatever it can to divert itself from its fear. It's a really funny thing because the ego is based on fear. So it creates the fear and then it tries to get itself out of the fear. Don't ask me. It's not something that's explainable, except for the fact that it is a part of the game called life. So when the mind is going a little bit crazy, then it is time for you to step into a place where you really become an observer. And I mean, this is where you have the ability to demonstrate some true support within yourself, some real power inside yourself. And what that power looks like is to notice all of the chatter that's going on. So in my mind, it's kind of like I'm standing behind myself and I'm watching whatever it is that's going on. I'm listening to the mind just go, blah, 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 whatever it's saying, whatever it's doing. And I don't do anything with it. That means that the thoughts can just go rampant and I'm observing the thoughts. This is truly the key to today's conversation right here. I'm going to go into this in a little bit more deeply. But if you walk away from this conversation knowing that the number one thing that you can do that will support you in your thought processes is to observe them, then you will have walked away with a tremendous gem, something that truly will change you and the way that you stress or don't more profoundly than ever before.
So let's maybe start at basics. Where do these thoughts come from?
These thoughts come from old programming. They come from experiences that we have had in our lives. They come from things that we have heard in our upbringing from our parents, our siblings, the internet, the TV, the radio, our teachers, our friends, books. Doesn't matter. Any place that you're receiving input is giving you another something to think about. When that thought comes in, when we're very small, we just take it as blatant truth. We don't question our parents until we do. But as
Maybe you don't know my parents.
You didn't ever question your parents?
Never.
Yeah, right. It's just a matter of how old you are before. And the truth is that frequently occurs on a subconscious level extremely young. Your parent will put you in the crib, put you to bed, and you're going, And that is in itself a conflicting statement. They're saying, get in bed, go to sleep. And you're going, I'm still awake and I don't want to. So you start screaming like a maniac or whatever. So it starts very young. But from a logical viewpoint, or from a conscious viewpoint would be better said, what occurs is that as we become old enough to discern that we have a choice, if you will, we don't really believe that there is anything but the golden truth that comes from our parents. So the biggest input, the biggest impact, the biggest intensity of our development comes from what it is that our parents tell us and what we hear from most regularly. That means that we take it as law, and as we get older and we start to see that there's another way of looking at this. Gosh, there's somebody else that's saying something different. Gosh, that's not what they said on the internet. Gosh, that's what they didn't say that on the radio. And pretty soon the mind gets a little bit confused. And as it goes through its confusion, it starts to question. And then all of a sudden, many times the mind will just become extremely overloaded because it doesn't know what to believe. It doesn't know what is real. It doesn't know what it can depend on. And that's kind of like a free fall. And in that free fall comes a disturbance, which is called lack of safety, which translates into fear. So now the fear is the factor that occurs. And what then occurs is there is a repetitiveness of that, usually the thought process and the emotion attached to it, meaning fear. And that being repeated regularly creates a program, a belief system, and a concept is born. And the concept is whatever that might be. It's not safe to tell the truth. It's not safe to ask for things. It's not okay for me to have my own voice or to speak my own opinion, or I'm just using these as an example. It could be anything. It could be something like we have to work really hard all of our lives. We can't have what we really want. I was born and made to be poor. I was not a smart child. Whatever the case may be, we take that in and we make that our way of believing, thinking, and living. It becomes a law, a personal law. We don't know this is going on, and therefore it overtakes us. So that's where the origination comes from, if you will.
Okay, so we have these beliefs, these programs. What's responsible for them coming up in any particular moment? Fear or flight or flight, I could understand. I mean, that's pretty real. But any of the other thoughts that we have, why do they come up sometimes and not other times? Who's running the ship?
So I'll tell you that, but give me an example.
Okay, so you say something to me like, it would have been nice if you had done this particular project in a certain way. Okay. And I have many possible responses. I have a program running. I'm not good enough. I've had criticism from my parents. That's a big one. But I've also had many experiences of being very successful and very productive. Why does one come up? Who's control at any particular time? Who is controlling the ship?
Who's controlling the ship is the one that has been emphasized, relived, or that has had the most energy put to it. So if you grow up hearing, I'm not enough, I can't do that, I don't do that right, I am not measuring up to whatever the standards are that your parents or whomever, your teacher perhaps, said that you ought to measure up. When that happens repeatedly, the feeling of a deep core sense of lack emerges. Now, every person has many core issues, one of which is the lack principle. I'm not enough. There isn't enough. Everything is in shortage. And therefore, when someone says, what was the example you just gave?
It would have been nice if you did it a different way.
Right. So that activates, it's like a big alarm goes off because that holds the possibility of you not doing it good enough. It activates that file, if you will, that program. So the energy, because it's familiar, it runs up to that file cabinet, opens it up, and boom, everything falls out. And all of a sudden, you are dumping on your partner or whomever, if you're in a place where you can do that. And you're immediately feeding back all of the pain and the suffering of not feeling enough that you acquired and you put in the file cabinet from, for example, your parents. That pain and suffering, that pain and difficulty, and that personal judgment did not get handled when it happened. Instead, it was shoved away. That doesn't mean it went away. It means it was shoved away.
You're really saying it was stuffed away.
Stuffed away is a very good way of putting it. That means that because we, in our own evolutionary process, are committed to, whether we know it or not, becoming more educated about ourselves and understanding ourselves more, what we do is we bring up these programs and they're up for us to reevaluate, to look more deeply, to investigate the truth about that, the reality, and have a better understanding of where it originated and how, without knowing that we had other choices or perceptions, we just took that as law. So when we have it come up and we allow ourselves to observe it and notice it and not be reactive to it, then what occurs is the energy given to it is so dissipated that it shrivels up. It really is unable to exist after some time. Now, many of you that listen regularly have heard me give this example, this metaphor, but I'm going to give it again because it's pertinent to what it is that we're speaking about. So there is this devotee or disciple that walks up to his guru and says, "Oh, guru, I have these two wolves, and one of them is really loving and kind and has such an amazing way of looking at life. And then I have this other one is constantly judging and critical, and nothing's ever right, and I'm not right, and all of these things. And I don't know what to do about this. Which one do I put my energy to, and how do I get rid of the one I don't want?" And the guru said, the one that will survive and flourish is the one that you feed. And what that means is that if you give energy to the I'm not enough, I never do it good enough, and you exacerbate that or you embellish that with the energy of reliving it over and over again, then that is the wolf that you are feeding. If you observe it, not ignore it, not stuff it, but just observe, oh, there's a program running, interesting, and you go back to the other side of the street, if you will, and you start feeding the part of, I am so glad I found a different perception for that. I'm really glad that I now know the truth, or whatever it is that you may do in those moments. That's where you're going to find that your evolution becomes more profound. And every time you release or delete one of these programs from the stuffed file cabinet, the archives, if you will, the more aware you become, the more you are able to see clearly, the more that you are able to speak with distinctive awareness that comes from a deeper place than just the recycled programming or recycled ignorance.
So just to bring that back to what you started speaking about, which was that observing the thoughts was the most powerful thing you could do. When we get to be able, the takeaway is when we're able to see it from a distant place, we can deal with it differently than if it's us involved or enmeshed in that experience.
Yes, that's absolutely true. And when we do what it is that you're saying, if we take what's going on and we jump into that den, we are feeding the wolf of negativity, make wrong, not enough, all of the core issues that exist within human beings. And that's the place that you don't want to visit or frequent at the highest level you can, because that will not get you the joy that you're ultimately looking for.
Or in simpler terms, don't feed yourself to the wolf.
That's true.
So we're going to take a break right now, but when we come back, and you can think about this question, is how can we stop ourselves and how can we become aware of our thoughts that for me and so many times they just keep coming without us even knowing that we're thinking. It's like sometimes start daydreaming or ensconced in something and we don't even know that we're doing it. So we'll be right back. Esateys, you think about that. And this is going to be a really, really important answer. We'll be right back. Okay, we're back. So do I need to repeat the question or you got it?
You told me to think. That was a funny statement.
I'm sorry. Excuse me. I don't know what I was thinking. You see, everybody, just to be 100% transparent, when I ask Esateys a question, she'll look at me and then all of a sudden the answer will just flow through her without any conscious thought. So the reason I asked the question that I did is I'm not quite there yet. And I know that what I'm thinking is so precious and I'm so left-brained, I guess you could say, that it's important to know where your thoughts are at any given moment.
So is the Reader's Digest version of the question, what are tools and how do I go about being aware of the thoughts?
How to be aware of the thoughts and then shifting them.
The very first thing to do is have a desire and an intention to be more aware, to be more conscious. And actually, we have a program called AQDQ, Awareness Quotient, Desire Quotient. And I literally give you steps on how to do this with an exercise that's quite profound. But let's give you a few tools here today. One is you start with the intention that you are more aware. How do you start with that intention? First of all, you make the statement to yourself and ideally write it down. The next thing that you do, which can be extremely helpful, is in the old days, we used something called a motivator, but now everybody has a phone. So you can put on your phone an alarm that goes off, say, every hour. When we use the motivator, I would set it for like every minute or every 3 minutes, but you pick a number that works for you and let your alarm go off. And when it does, you become aware of what it is that you've been thinking. Just kind of go do an inventory in your head about what's been going on. Where are you in that moment? Are you present in your body? Can you feel your fingers and your toes? What kinds of things have been ruminating? Has there been something that's been going over in your mind over and over again? Or are you completely focused in the moment? In other words, it's an awareness moment. So if you choose to have an awareness moment, that means that you have to make that a new way of being, a new habit, if you will. We know that habits say 21 days. I say for some, maybe 30 days, that you continuously are setting that alarm and even writing about it. And when you do that, it will become a way of thinking, a way of living, a way of remembering, if you will. You could also, every evening, you could write in a journal and write down all the things that you can remember with awareness. Oh, I was aware that I made that phone call. I was aware that I felt irritated when I spoke to whomever. I was aware that I felt very excited when I got that email. Bring back the awarenesses that you had that you didn't even know that you had. And this focused intention is going to bring you back to a higher level of habituation. In other words, humans work best when they learn something through repetitiveness, and that comes through repeating the same behavior over and over again. So we have intention, we have setting an alarm, we have writing in a journal in the evening about the things that you're remembering. And the other thing that you can do is to ask someone that you are close to or someone that you work with or whatever to be your partner and ask for an accountability partner. And in doing so, you can ask that partner to ask you. And if they're interested, you can ask them. And at that moment, you can say, okay, where's your mind at? Okay, how are you feeling? It'll bring you back into your body. We are unconscious because we're not really present in our body. That means that we have to get present. Awareness comes from being in the moment, in that very moment, knowing what we think, what we feel, and what we're doing is a rarity for most people because they're kind of swirling somewhere around themselves. Another thing that occurs is if you have a trigger, something that irritates you, when you start to feel that tightness in your gut or a flame like a bonfire going off inside of you, that's a clue. That's a very, very big clue that you've got some thought processes running that have framed something in a way that doesn't make you happy. It conflicts with a belief system that you have. When that occurs, you use that as a tool to help you become even more aware. So at this point, you feel the feelings and you immediately become an observer of the feelings. This is one option. That means that you watch your mind going round and round and round and round. I'm pretty sure everyone who's listening has had that thing where something occurred and you just keep replaying that conversation over and over. And when that occurs, observe that. No judgment. You don't do anything with it. You just observe it. That's one of your options. Another option is to, when you notice that you're triggered, something is really uncomfortable inside of you, then drop your focus into your body and feel what the body sensations are. Feel the tightness in your gut. Notice if your jaw is clenched. Notice that your eyebrows may be furrowed. Notice if you're clenching your fists or your toes are tight and curled. What's happening in your physical body? You're not doing anything with anything. You are noticing how your body is responding. The more frequently you do these things that I'm speaking about, the more aware you will become. And the more aware you become, the more masterful you will be at diminishing your thoughts, taking charge of your life, instead of you making a decision to what degree you would like to spend on things that may or may not be making you feel as good as you would like to feel.
So earlier, when we first started, you were talking about being able to observe the thoughts. And one thought that came to me, that's funny, is the notion of being able to observe or look at what's happening as if it were up on a big TV screen and we're watching a movie. And it takes out the immediate identification with self, and we can just see a bunch of actors, things happening to them and whatever, like we do when we go to the movies or on TV, so that it takes away the immediacy of our feelings and allows us to put some distance or perspective to it.
That is a great idea. It's something that I have recommended and I think is a great reminder to do because, again, you are becoming disassociated from it. So be aware that I'm talking about two pretty different things. One is to go into the feeling and feel the body sensations, and you are not resisting what's going on. That in and of itself will dissipate the feeling and actually eliminate it if you can go deep enough into it without a whole lot of mental rhetoric. The other is to do what it is when we talked about observing, and the example that you gave, Rafael, which is a great idea, is to Just see what it is your mind's telling you on the screen, and you're sitting in the audience watching the screen play this movie. And in fact, this is, as a little aside here, a really great thing to do if you have somebody who is verbally attacking you. What you do is you look at them and it's like somebody hit the mute button and all you can see is their lips moving and there are gyrations going on, but you can't hear any words. And it's really quite fascinating to do that because what it does is it puts you in a place where you are not at effect, but instead you hit the mute button and you are not going to be a victim of whatever the words were. And you'll find I've had many of the people that I've worked with do this, and it is really awesome. In fact, the biggest thing is that frequently you want to start laughing, and that sometimes will make the other person really angry. So you may or may not want to do that depending upon who you're with. But the bottom line is that you can just look at them and you're seeing right through them as a playful way to not hear anything.
And in our, I guess, more advanced work that we do is basically like just seeing this all as a game, and we don't have to take it in and be so real. Although I must say, when I'm in trigger, it feels pretty real.
Yeah, it does. It does.
And in reality, it's not real.
You're right. So those tools are a really, really good start. If you have an interest in learning more, of course, we always have the AQDQ program that you can find on our website at esateys.com. But you also, if it's something that's really getting to you, if it's really bothering you, remember, I do coaching, I do one-to-one coaching, and we also do retreats and other things that you can receive deeper and more profound support to move through some of these things. You know, we speak lightly about them, but they're sometimes really hard. And it isn't always as easy as it sounds because we have some deep programming going on. And to eliminate that deep program in 20 seconds or 20 minutes, it doesn't happen usually that way, although it's absolutely possible. It takes consistency, commitment, and follow through, and usually support.
And I was just going to say the support from someone else to help you see what you can't see at that moment.
Exactly.
So I just wanted to reiterate and press on a point that you made, Esateys, and that is the importance of awareness. This awareness thing goes to whether you are or can be happy. It goes to how you interact with others in all of your relationships. You can't change anything within yourself, which is where any change must occur for something to change, unless you're aware of it first. So awareness is beyond incredibly essential to any work that we can do on ourselves in order to change something that is happening with us that we're not so happy about.
That's a really, really good point.
It amazes me. Every conversation we have always ends up in awareness. So with that, that's just a takeaway to think about. And we have a question tonight. And this is a question that came from Amy in San Francisco. And a few weeks ago, we did a show about the body. And what she wrote, and we just haven't had a chance to get to, is, I really can't seem to master my sugar craving. What's a healthier way to snack so I can feel satisfied?
And you said that was Amy?
Amy.
Amy, thank you for writing. We really appreciate when people write to us with their questions. Esateys at esateys.com and write podcast question in the subject line, because this is for you all to be able to have questions answered and grow to a new level as you desire to. So, Amy, sugar cravings, that's a big one because it is an addiction just like smoking, alcohol, sex, drugs, anything. And it's hard, and I have a lot of compassion for that. The body becomes very used to having something, and I'm going to give you kind of a quick overview here. First of all, sometimes the sugar cravings are because of a blood sugar issue. So it's important for you. You can actually go to the doctor and ask them to run a blood test on you, a blood sugar and a hemoglobin A1C, because that'll say where your blood sugar has been for the last 3 months. So you can just rule out anything physical. Secondly, please understand that sugar cravings are frequently from parasites and literally worms in our body. So if you have never wormed yourself or never had any parasite care, that's something that you want to look into. I can help you with that. If you have an interest, let me know or find someone who can support you with that, because we would ideally worm our bodies, ideally 3 times a year. And we remember that we worm our dogs and our horses and our cats and all those other things. I don't know why we think we should not do ourselves, because we get those kinds of things from lettuce and everywhere else. At any rate, that is another thing to consider, because certain things like candida and certain amoebas, they crave sugar and they will increase your sugar desire so they can be nourished. I know it's a little gross, but that is what is.
Before you go on, could you just explain to people what worming yourself means or what's entailed? Because first time you told that to me, I thought you were totally off the wall.
Okay, thank you. It means that you just take some pills, some capsules that are herbal in nature, and you take them starting before the full moon and before the new moon, and you go through a cycle of like maybe 2 months, depending upon if you've ever done this before, and it will help eliminate. It's amazing how much better you will feel when you have those things cleared out of your body. So it's not some weird thing that you have to do to your body. It's just a matter of, it's a cleansing thing. So then the other thing is to, at the highest level you can, really cut down on your sugar intake. Be conscious of what has sugar in it. If you drink sodas, if you eat candies, if you do all those type things, any processed food, pastas and things like that, they turn into sugar very quickly. And that's going to create a much more radical rebound effect, because it's called reactive hypoglycemia. Your sugar is going to go way up, then your insulin is going to be expressed, and then that will cause the sugar to go way down, and then you have the sugar cravings all over again. So that's another little tidbit of information. If you know that you just can't handle it, then find sugars that are metabolized differently than processed sugars. That means that you pay attention to what kinds of sugars you are taking in, and use fruit as your sugar. So a lot of sugar in fruit, but it's metabolized differently than if you eat a cookie. Another thing you can do is you will find that if you eat certain vegetables that they're pretty high in carbohydrates, like peas and carrots, there's actually a fair amount of sugar in them, even sweet potatoes, and that will many times help you reach a more satisfied place. If you still feel like you need more things, then do your best to go to and buy your food, your sweet food, if you will, well, all food, but from a health food store that uses sugars that are not of high fructose corn syrup and all those other kinds of things, but rather things that are more natural. And this is a really, really, really big one. Read the ingredient label on every single thing that you put in your mouth. That means if it comes from nature, you don't have to read the ingredients, because there aren't any. But if we're talking about a quote unquote protein bar, or we're talking about yogurt, some yogurts have 30 grams of sugar in them. In the ideal world, work your way down to having no more than 10 grams at the most in any one thing that you eat, and ideally like 5. Like Kind protein bars have, most of them have 5 grams of sugar. So that's nuts. Yes, it has a little chocolate, but it has less sugar and it doesn't have yucky sugar in it. So there are things that you can purchase that will be a little bit more acceptable to your body. And if you are willing to really make some of just any of those changes, you will notice a very significantly different experience in your body and in your cravings. And the last piece of this is that sugar cravings are many, many times because of an emotional need. And the emotional need is usually that we don't feel safe. And that lack of safety can come from being in a relationship that doesn't feel safe. It can be about money, not feeling like you're taken care of or you have enough money. It could be that you're in a relationship or in an environment where you are attacked verbally, physically, mentally, emotionally, energetically, in any way. That makes us want to cover ourselves up or buffer, put up a buffer layer, which ends up being fat on the body. And of course, we all know that when you have more tissue on the body than your body needs, it makes your body work so hard. It is way harder on all of your organs, and people die from having so much fat around their organs, even though they can't see it. And it's those deeper things that you also want to look at as you're looking at your commitment to really handle your eating, AKA sugar, AKA carbohydrate experience. Hopefully, those are enough tools to get you started, and know that I'm always here for you.
Well, cool, Amy. Thanks for the question again. And it's been a really awesome show today, because I think what we really got to about this awareness thing is a great takeaway for all of us to just keep in mind. And so, to the question of the day.
Big drum roll question is, do you have your pen and paper or your phone that you can write it down? One of the things you can do is put it in a text and send it to yourself. And that would be, what if I just observed every thought? Or what would it take for me to observe every thought? What would it take for me to observe every thought? That means you don't dive into the thought and go insane about it. It means you watch the thought come and go. And the less energy you give it, the more profoundly it will diminish. What would it take for me to observe all my thoughts?
These questions are so powerful. I can't even begin to say enough about them. I actually have programmed them into my phone every hour. My phone goes off with a question that I pre-programmed. And I would suggest for maximum or fastest change is to utilize those questions, because you may not know the answer now, but the answer will come to you sooner or later and will open up vistas that you've never considered before.
The idea is to not look for an answer with your mind. The purpose of these questions is for it to be rhetorical. It sends a message out through the Google Mind, and something will show up at some unknown and unplanned time or space that will help you become more enlightened about what it is that you are asking.
Okay, so with that, we will leave you and see you next week, and hope you have a great week.
May the force be with you, because it already is. Take care. Feel a hug.
Bye.